Will it work? You little beauty. G'day everyone, today we are looking at Makita routers, specifically Makita cordless routers. There is two 40 volt routers and one 18 volt router here on the bench, but we need to get that out of the way so we can get into reviewing them. On the left here we have the LXT DRT50, or if you are in the States it'll be the XTR01. Next to that, the 40 volt equivalent, the RT001G, or if you're in the States, the GTR01. And in the back here, let's get these out of the way, shall we? The new beast, the RP001G, or in the States, the GPR01. Makita have also just recently released a new 18 volt version, but it's like a budget version. This is plastic, not aluminium like it is on here. And yeah, so these are the high-end ones. We won't delve into the budget one here today. So in this video we'll compare sort of runtime between these two and between this one and maybe a Hikoki equivalent of this and maybe these two, whatever. We'll see how it goes as we go along. And also I'm going to show you some accessories that you might not know of or be aware of or you just can't find, and I'll put links to all these things as we go along. Look down in the description if you want to find a link to any of the tools or the accessories that I show in this video, because I will try and put as many links as possible down there so that you can hunt them out if you so desire. So first up, let's look at some accessories. If you have one of these 18 volt ones or you have a corded one and you want to maybe upgrade, change to a 40 volt one, you don't have to worry about changing all of these parts, because all the bases, all the guides, everything that fits on this 18 volt version or the corded version also fits. You can just swap them around. They all just fit on each other, no problem at all. So that also goes for these and the plunge base and everything that attaches to the plunge base, such as this guide here, which is a big beast of a thing. Now this one here, this has a micro adjust on it. It has lots of different ways you can use it. Everything moves, these slide back and forward. You can put different rails in it depending on your router. If you've got an old school big router, you can put rails on the outside here. It comes with two different sets of rails. So you've got like 8mm and 10mm. So these are 8s, the 10s go on the outside there. Just swap over your screws there depending on your router. But for these routers that are in this video, this fits nicely into the plunge base, like so. And also into the new RP001G, like so. And as you can see, it's got nice big long rails, so good for doing cuts that are a long way in a board, and you've got a lot of support along here. So if you're interested in one of those, they fit pretty much every Makita router. Maybe not every Makita router through the history of time, but hey. So if you're interested in one of those, have a look down there. Also, I have another new one that I have just acquired from Makita. Before I tell you what that is, let's take a look at the runtime of this versus this. We're gonna go 18 volt versus 40 volt. So the 18 volt battery we are going to use, let's check how many charges it has had. 2 charges. It's fully charged, perfect battery health, everything all good. What about the 40 volt? Put the adapter on. There we go. 2 charges, fully charged, health all good. Each one has the same bit in it so that hopefully we won't have any discrepancies, and put those in just to make it a bit more resistance and hopefully make the test a little bit shorter, because it is a bit boring just filming tools running on a bench. So what I'm going to do is set them going on their highest speed, the 18 volt 30,000 RPM unfortunately on its top speed, whereas this one, the XGT, 31,000. So I'm not going to try and dial this back to work out, try and get it on 30,000. We'll just have to go with the top speed on each one. So place your bets. What do you reckon? Will this run longer because we've got 5 amp hour versus 2.5 amp hour? Or because this is 36 volt and this is 18, is it going to run cooler, more efficiently, not need to put out so many amps to keep the thing running? So will basically be the same. Well, there's only one way to find out.
Life's kind of like a video game, bigger than it looks, fundamentally strange when you die. That's why I'm eating snacks and chilling with babe, and I don't really give a flying fuck what you say, cause I'm high, yeah, I'm so high up on my way.
Finally! That test went on a bit longer than I anticipated. So it was about 38.5 minutes, I do recall, for that one. 46.5 for this one. 8 minutes better for the 40 volt. Some people would think that this would run half the length of time of that because it's higher voltage, so it's using more volts, more power, and only 2.5 amp hour runtime. But as you've just seen, it doesn't work like that. Now, when it comes to runtime between these two, presumably this is going to have far greater runtime than this. This has got a far bigger motor in it. It's got to do a lot more work, doesn't it? So it's going to run out a lot quicker on this than it is on this. And we already know the time of this, so we don't need to really put these two up against each other. So let's get that one out of shot. And let's put these two up against each other. We will use two 36 volt batteries, obviously. So the Makita is completely flat, and the Hikoki completely flat. So these are both 2.5 amp hour 36 volt batteries, or 40 volt max. They're about the same vintage. I think they've done around the 50 odd charges each. I'm going to go chuck them both now on the chargers. As soon as they're done, we'll bung them on the tools, see how long they go for. Right, so the batteries are now charged. Let's put them on their respective routers and get this show on the road. As you can see, I have the same router bit in each router. They are set at the same height, so if there's any wind resistance or anything, it is equal between both routers, as good as it can be. And because these things tend to slide around and move about when you're videoing them on the bench here, my wife has provided me with some lovely pink grippy stuff. Place your bets, this one could be interesting.
Life's kind of like a video game, bigger than it looks, fundamentally strange when you die. That's why I'm eating snacks and chilling with babe, and I don't really give a flying fuck what you say, cause I'm high, yeah, I'm so high up on my way.
Well, that was surprising. I knew how long that one would go for because I'd done it before. But the Makita, what's going on? So, this one around 13 minutes, less runtime than this one. And when you consider the runtime was only 15 minutes, that's a big difference. It's almost twice as long running the Hikoki than the Makita. Although, with the Makita, it does cut so much quicker than this one. They may be the same speeds, but you can push this one a lot more than you can this one. This one is, shall we say, maybe using the Milwaukee model, in that, you know, they're trying to pump out as much power as possible, and therefore you lose a bit of the runtime. Although it didn't even run as long as the Milwaukee that I've tested as well. The Milwaukee 18 volt, I think, did around 19 minutes with the equivalent battery, a 5 amp hour 18 volt. So, was that an anomaly, or is this using much more power than this? I think I'm going to chuck another battery on here now. I'll put on a newer battery. These two were sort of similar vintage, similar amount of charges, around that 50 charge mark. Here is a much newer battery with only around 5 charges. So let's see how that one goes. I'll just run this one by itself and just see if we get a similar runtime of around that 15-minute mark, or whether we get a lot more. Maybe there's something wrong with this battery. That's certainly what everybody will tell me in the comments, so I better do another test, because people love saying that batteries are fake or something's wrong with them. So let's do it again with this one.
Life's kind of like a video game, bigger than it looks, fundamentally strange when you die. That's why I'm eating snacks and chilling with babe, and I don't really give a flying fuck what you say, cause I'm high, yeah, I'm so high up on my way.
Well, 3 minutes longer runtime. That's quite significant. Maybe that old battery was a bit more depleted than I thought. So that is why you will see me on this channel try and use newish batteries as much as I possibly can. That's why I say all the time I keep selling my old batteries, recycling them, cycling through new ones, so that these tests are as good as possible. But because I didn't have a very new Hikoki one, because I don't do as many tests with Hikoki, thought I'd use an older 40 volt, but maybe it was a bit too old. But even so, still nearly 10 minutes slower, or 10 minutes less, should I say, runtime than the Hikoki, which is a bit disappointing. But then again, when it comes to actually using the tool, things are a little different. Take a look at this test and see what you think after that. Each time when you see one of the tools stop, it's because it has overloaded. Tool's overloaded, just needs to have the trigger, reset, start again. So take a look at this. So in that test there, running these big booty buggers, the Makita with a 4 amp hour F battery, still fully charged at the end of it. Well, not fully charged, but still showing 4 bars. The Hikoki was showing 2 as soon as it finished, but it did jump back up to 3 by the time I finished and went inside and started filming. And a Milwaukee Forge 6 amp hour was completely depleted in the exact same test. So maybe the Makita there running at a far higher sort of output than the Hikoki, but under load is able to keep that up, and so it goes through the material quicker, smoother, and therefore isn't using as much battery under load as the Hikoki is, and definitely nowhere near as much as the Milwaukee. So even though it was much quicker to cut out in that test here on the bench, maybe it's not that bad. To do a cut under load consistently with no stopping, sort of just going until they die, pretty tricky to do, to get an exact gauge on which one will last longer and which one will cut the most and all that sort of thing. But from my under load tests, the battery life seems to be better on the Makita under load. Right, back to this box. What do we have in here? Well, I'll tell you that it says made in Japan on the end, so it's interesting. Let's take a wee look. Just like this one, this comes with 2 different sizes of rail. This is much easier for Makita, just having one model that they know will fit all of their routers. But let's put it together and see what it actually is. That's right, it is of course a guide rail adapter. Now the way I've got it set up at the moment, I haven't tightened this up, so you can move that backwards and forwards. You've got a little bit of movement there. If you're doing repetitive, like grooves next to each other or something, you can just sort of tighten it each time here, and away you go. You can also shift it at this end. There is in here a screw on each side that pushes against a piece of plastic in there so that you can get it nice and snug on your rail. And it comes with a couple of these. There's one on there right now, just so that we hold this at the right height, the base. And if you're doing it maybe over the edge of something, you've got a step down, a rebate, you're going into a groove or something, got a slightly longer one here so that you can make sure everything is kept nice and level. And if you want to know more about that, the link with the model number will be down in the description. And this of course also fits in this plunge base for the 1/4 inch routers, like so, and that takes the 18 volt and of course also the 40 volt. I think it also even takes the Hikoki. I tested that before, right? So if you end up buying multiple Makita routers like the guy in this video has, you don't at least have to buy multiple versions of all of the adapters, because you only need one of those because it'll fit on all of the tools. And another thing, if your router didn't come with one of these, go get one of those, nice and handy. I'll put a link to that down in the description as well. You can use this to follow the edge of a piece of work, or you can also use it to run along the edge when you have a router bit in line with it, so that you can get a flush cut if you haven't got a router bit with a roller already on it. Nice handy little bit of kit, and sometimes they come with routers and sometimes they don't. My first Makita router came with this one. But none of these ones here did. So where you live, you may or may not get one of those in the box with one of these. But all three of these routers should come with a basic guide like this. Well, the 1/2 inch one is a kit set affair like this. But it does, of course, come in the box. The 40 volt 1/2 inch also comes with this. If you didn't get one of these with your smaller 1/4 inch routers, I'll see if I can find some links for those as well. Man, I'm going to be looking for a lot of links for this video. We'll do a quick test now to compare them. We'll use this 1/4 inch bit here because can't put a 1/2 inch one in the little trim routers, obviously. And this is a 3/8 or about a 10mm bit, and we'll cut to about a depth of 3/8 or 10mm as well, and just see how they compare to each other. Didn't want to stall that one. This is like well compressed inside that groove. Couldn't suck it out with the vac. The other 40 volt, very similar, but the 18 volt I managed to suck out. So read into that what you want. So the 1/2 inch compared to the Hikoki was a bit disappointing in that runtime test I did here on the bench, but the thing with this one is it seems to do similar runtime when it's under load. When I have a big amount of routing to do, I'll try and do it with the pair of them and put this up against the Hikoki again, and we'll see if there's any significant difference in the runtime, you know, how many batteries we go through over a large run. When it came to these two, the 18 volt versus the 40 volt trim routers, the 18 volt got smashed, of course, by this one. The 18 volt, it's a good little tool, but this one just has more torque. It can sustain the RPM under load much better than the 18 volt. So this one in the test stalled, whereas this one I started pushing harder and harder trying to get it to stall, and it didn't. If I'd pushed this one as hard as I'd pushed this one at the beginning, this would have stalled pretty early on. But not quite as much difference between the two 40 volts. Like there's a much bigger jump between that 18 and that 40 than between these two 40s. This one is about 6,000 RPM faster than this one, so you know, some of that may have played into it. This one though can keep that high limit of 25,000 at a more sustainable level with the bigger motor than this can. So this will struggle a bit more when you're pushing hard and long. So over distance, this will win in the end. But if you're only doing small stuff, this may end up going through the batteries much quicker than this does, because on the bench test, as you saw, this has a way longer runtime than this. Oh, speaking of runtime, I forgot. This will extend the runtime somewhat, won't it? Should have put that in the video. Oh well, next time.